All right, guys, now we want to implement local storage into our application. So there's a few areas where we actually need to do this. So first off, of course, we need to add it to local storage. If I add an item here, right now it's just added to the DOM and goes away when I reload. So we want that to get saved to local storage. We also want to be able to remove an item, right? Because if we have an item and then we delete it, we also want to delete it from local storage. And then we also want to load the items when the page loads. We want to fetch from local storage and show those items, right? So there's a few things we need to do. Now, the way that this is going to work, if you remember from the last video, we can only store strings in local storage. It's key value pairs and the value has to be a string. What we want to save though is the list of items. Okay, so what we're going to do is have an array of the list of items, and we're going to stringify that with the json.stringify method, and then we're going to put it in local storage. So it's actually stored as a string, but it still looks like an array. Then when we take it out, we can run it through the json.parse method, and that will turn it back into a regular array that we can use. All right, and we looked at those JSON methods in, I think, the first section. So let's start off here. We have the submit. When we submit this form, we're calling this add item. I'm actually going to change the name of this to, let's say, on add item submit. I'm going to be more specific because we're going to do two things. We're going to add it to the DOM and we're going to add it to local storage. So we'll have this be the event handler, and then we'll have two other methods to do both of those things in this function. So let's go up here where we have add item, and let's say on add item submit. All right, and then underneath that, I'm going to create a new function called add item to DOM. Okay, so basically what we're doing now, and it's going to take in the item, which will just be the text from the form, and then we can just grab these lines right here where we're creating the list item, creating the text node, adding the button, and then adding to the DOM. So I'm going to just cut those, and we're going to paste that right in this function. And the only thing we need to change is instead of new item right here, we're going to pass in item, which comes from the argument here. So now here we only have to call add item to DOM. And what we want to pass in is this right here, the new item that's coming from the form. So if I save this, it should work the same exact way. It's just broken up into another function. All right, now to add to local storage, we're going to have another function. So let's say function, and we'll call this add to, or add item to storage. And that's going to take in item. All right, now we're going to have to do a check to see if we already have items in local storage. So first thing I'm going to do is just create a variable with let called items from storage, and that's going to represent the array of items in local storage. And then we'll have an if statement to see if there's anything in there. So let's say if local storage dot get item, and we want to pass in a key. We're going to use items for the key, and we're going to see if that is equal to null. Okay, if it's equal to null, then there's nothing in there, so we just want to set items from storage to an empty array. Okay, else if there is something in there, then we want to add those items to this array, this items from storage. So we'll say items from storage, and we're going to set that, basically set that to the array of items in storage. So we can get the items with dot get item, and then pass in our key, which is items, but this is going to give us a string. I want it to be an array, so I'm going to just parse it with json.parse, wrap that, and that should give us the array. All right, and then we want to take the new item and add it to this array. So we can use the push method for that. We'll say items from storage dot push, and we'll push the item that's being passed into the function. All right, and then finally, the last thing we want to do is we'll say convert to array. I'm sorry, convert to JSON string. We're going to stringify it and set to local storage. So we can do that with local storage dot get item, and I'm sorry, not get item, set item. So let's say set item, which is going to take in the key we want to use, which of course is items, and then we want to pass in here this items from storage, but remember we have to stringify it first. So let's say JSON dot stringify, and then in here we can pass in our items from storage. All right, now just to kind of reiterate what's happening here, we're initializing this variable or creating this variable. We're checking to see if there's no items in storage. If there isn't, that variable is set to an empty array. If there are items in storage, then we're parsing the string back into an array and putting those items in this variable. Then we're just adding, let's say, add new item to array. And then we're just converting it back into a string and putting it back into local storage. All right, now we just have to go up here to our submit, and right after we add to the DOM, so let's just say create item DOM element, and then add item to local storage. We don't really need these comments, but I'll just put them anyways. So add item to storage and pass in here again the new item. All right, so that should at least take care of adding it to storage. So let's add juice. We're going to add it. Now it's still going to go away because I haven't fetched anything from local storage, but if we open up our application tab and we go to local storage, you should see a key of items and you see a value. Now it looks like an array. It has the brackets and a string inside of it, but it's actually just a stringified array, right? Because you can't store true arrays in local storage. But then when we pull it out, we're doing a JSON.parse, which will then turn it back into a regular array. All right, now if I add another one here, let's say milk, now that gets added to the list. Okay, so you can see here. So now that we're able to add items, what I want to do in the next video is make sure when we come to the page, they actually get displayed, because if I reload, everything goes away.